Little time to talk about phrase rhythm, the topics that Rothstein covers in chapter 2 of his book, Phrase Rhythm and Tonal Music. The first thing I want to talk about is phrase connections, one of the major topics in that chapter. Then I'll move to hypermetrical anomalies. Phrase overlap is one way that you can take two phrases and join them so that there isn't any dead air in between the two. So if phrase 1 ends on a tonic chord, then the next phrase, if it begins with a tonic as well, can share that tonic. They could have been separate entities, but because of this shared one, they can have it as a common ground between the two. That allows phrase overlap. So that's a big topic. Phrase overlap. Another way that you can connect phrases, I'll put it down here, is to create a link between them. Here's a phrase 1, a phrase 2. We have something that's usually a melodic gesture with no harmonic underpinning, normally, that links the two. There's got to be a connection on both sides. Later we'll talk about prefix, which is something that's not part of the phrase, a main part of the phrase, but serves as a way to set up the phrase that follows. So it connects with the phrase that follows, but not with the one before. So this is called a link. Rothstein calls it a lead-in, but that makes it sound like it's really all about the next phrase. And so I'm going to use the word link because it shows that it's, in a sense, holding hands on both sides. It's got a connection with the phrase before and a connection with the phrase that follows. Let me go back to phrase overlap now and talk about a subtle other term that is related to it, elision. We're used to these in language. We have the word cannot. Now you could speak both words separately. You could say can and not, but we don't say both ends. We drop one of them. One of them is doing double duty. We're saying cannot, one end sound. That's very similar to phrase overlap. You've lost some content by just the very fact of reusing the one. You've used it twice for two different purposes. Same with the end sound in the word cannot. If you know French, you're often dropping things. Elisions happen all the time. We don't say la après-midi d'un fond. We just say l'après. And so instead of la and après, we use the ah sound once. L'après-midi. So those are examples of elision. In music, we're going to often have a sense that one phrase or the other, usually the second phrase, jumps in at a forte dynamic level and sort of owns that moment more than the phrase that preceded it. When that happens, elision is a nice way to capture the sense that something expected has been dropped. Visually, another way to show that is this is overlap between these two objects, a circle and a triangle. Another way, though, is to show that the second thing, moving left to right, the triangle predominates and sort of owns that moment more than the circle. We could reverse that and show the circle as the main thing and then have this triangle that peeks out from behind it. So they're all cases of overlap. Here you can see both. Here you see mainly the triangle. Here you see mainly or in the foreground, the circle. So it dominates that moment of overlap. These two are nice illustrations of elision, whereas this one is just straight up overlap. Elision is a kind of overlap, but it shows that something is missing. It's not shared common ground so much as it's owned primarily by one phrase or the other. It's a subtle distinction, but usually it's very clear orally what's going on with those situations. Let me give you examples of each one.